Casino workers of Reddit, what's the worst loss or worst case of gambling addiction you've seen?
Well, I have 16 years in the casino business. I was a dealer for about 3 years and a pit boss for 9. The saddest thing I had witnessed happened over time. There was a genuinely very nice couple that came in and played Let It Ride. The game is atrocious odds-wise, utterly boring, and I was always miserable dealing it. The woman was in her early 50s, quite overweight, and wheelchair-bound, and the husband was very thin and mousy. The husband was always the one to play, and the wife would sit behind him. They didn't even bet heavily, but they were there 7 days a week for hours and hours a day, weeks in a row. As time went on, they stopped being as nice to the staff and to each other. They were both obviously not taking care of themselves as they had been, hygienically speaking. Eventually one night, the husband turned around to ask the wife for more money, and she absolutely broke down in a shaking, sobbing fit. Just uncontrollably, inconsolable. He was pretty demanding, and she was slow handing over the last couple of 20s out of her purse, and she said, "Tom, this is it. If you lose this, we won't eat this month." I absolutely refused to take the money, called my supervisor over and explained the situation, and thankfully, unlike a lot of joints, they backed that decision up. That was very early on in my career, and it really hit me hard that I had taken tens of thousands of dollars from those people. If I remember right, we evicted them lifetime and connected them with the state problem gambling service. When I was a pit boss, watching a table in high limit, I saw a guy buy in for $5,000 and run it up to about $250,000 by the time I went home. Badass run. So I come back in the next day at 5 p.m. and the guy is still there. Not surprising. The guy has about $125K in chips in front of him, so I say, "Oh man, Dave took a bit of a thumping while I was sleeping." The pit boss I was relieving was standing off to the side making the stop talking gesture, so I chuckled and went over to get him relieved. Turns out the guy had given it all back and was in $350,000 more. Oof. Probably the craziest thing I had seen in all of those years was a guy, again in high limit, I was there all the damn time once I was a pit boss, who got beat up all night. Just hours of just getting thumped. After a particularly nasty beat on some splits and double downs, he said, "I lose one more hand, I'm shitting on the floor." I informed him that would be a super bad idea and went over to call surveillance and security. It was right at the end of a shoe, so this I'm calling while the dealer is shuffling. Security is up there close, but not too close. Surveillance is watching. First hand out of the shoe dealer, 10, peeks, rolls over the ace, quicker than I could blink. The dude has his pants down grunting. Gaming Commission and security were none too happy arresting the guy, but I was entertained. It was right at the end of a shoe, so this I'm calling while the dealer is shuffling. Security is up there close, but not too close. Surveillance is watching. First hand out of the shoe dealer, 10, peeks, rolls over the ace, quicker than I could blink. The dude has his pants down grunting. Gaming Commission and security were none too happy arresting the guy, but I was entertained. He'd be playing blackjack on his phone while he was playing poker with us, and he kept showing us these hands where he was winning or losing more on a single hand than he was losing all night at the poker game. We started to get worried, and it turns out he had gambled away his entire life savings. He had cashed out all his retirement, emptied his joint bank accounts, and never told his wife. It was high 6 figures. She left him immediately and he stopped coming to the games. I still don't know what happened to him. In hindsight, that was the moment that I stopped enjoying poker. I always enjoyed taking money from suckers, but when I saw that, I don't know. It wasn't the same. It's a real sickness. I feel for those people. Oh, here goes. So Indian casinos were sort of a new thing back in the mid-1990s. Not any locals knew the rules of gambling, so they were like babes in the woods. Well, one busy Saturday night, some wannabe local redneck hotshot rolled in with his wife and his big fancy pickup, and all their friends, and had a pretty good evening. They won a couple grand on the newbie blackjack tables. House DGAF because the whole batch spent like $5,000 on food and booze. Next weekend, same batch rolls in, and because they're all shitty bombed drunk, they must have blown $25,000, possibly each. They all got their spanking, lessons learned, and never came back. Worst hangover ever, waking up that you just threw away $25,000 in 1995 dollars. Except the wife. The wife of Mayor McCheese started showing up nearly every night. At first, she'd just get sloppy, lose a bunch of money at blackjack. But after time, all the fancy rings started to disappear one by one, leaving a tan line. Then her expensive diamond/emerald earrings vanished. Her big expensive necklaces went too. Right before the end, her wedding band was gone. She had pawned off every bit of everything, like a single stupid blackjack was somehow going to lead her to riches, which she already had before she ruined her life. About 2 weeks after that, she lost her ass at the tables again, and went up to the ATM to get more cash. The ATM seized her credit card and she collapsed in a sobbing, screaming heap. She had pawned every piece of jewelry she owned, wrecked her marriage, maxed out all of her credit cards, and was bankrupt. The casino? Security dragged her ass outside to her car, where tribal cops were sitting waiting to pull her back out for trying to start a car like shit-faced drunk. The definition of white trash is financially, morally and intellectually bankrupt. Don't gamble, kids. Not a casino worker, but was in Vegas once and my buddy wanted to go off the strip. So we head to a casino about a 15-minute drive away, and it was very large and open. It was late afternoon, early evening, and the place was kind of dead. We were at a blackjack table with only one other local. About 30 minutes later, we get up to leave the blackjack table and cash out our minuscule winnings. We turn around and see a line of about 100 deep to get to the cashier. We are floored and wonder where all these people came from. Dealer said the casino was running a promotion that if you cashed your work check there, you would get something extra in return. And all these people were lined up to get the extra. This was at a time when majority of people already had direct deposit, so the people cashing their physical work checks were the ones least likely to be able to afford it. Always stuck with me of just how sad it was to see people lining up to cash their work checks instead of rent or groceries or necessities. So I had a friend, who I'll call M for the sake of this story. M was a very close friend of mine. We met in secondary school and we did everything together. He was the one person in my life that I could honestly consider my best friend. We did everything together, played video games, movies, sleepovers, everything you normally do with your friends. What I didn't know was that M had a lot of trouble at home, a heavy-handed father and a mother who just didn't care. After we went to separate colleges, we didn't speak as often but still stayed in touch and messaged each other at least once a week. I can remember vividly that one week I messaged him and didn't receive a reply all week. After countless messages and no response, I decided to visit his parents' house to find out if he's okay. His sister answered the door and brought me in to talk. Turns out M has been dealing with his home issues by drinking at pubs, and it was at these pubs he developed a gambling habit. He went on to continuously spend more money than he had by overdrafting multiple bank cards and borrowing money. At some point he dropped out of college and went home. It was at home he had an argument with his parents over unpaid debts. This argument resulted in M packing his belongings and leaving. No one has heard from him since, and he has not been online on any of his social media since that date. Gambling can take its toll and destroy the lives of those that are already vulnerable, so please, take care of your friends who you think may have this issue. Wherever you are now, M, I miss you. I hope you are well and have found yourself a much more comfortable life. In the Netherlands, you can formally only play casino games in the state casino. But there is this chain Jack's Casino that's just slot machines, including automated roulette, that I'm pretty sure lives of the people who are no longer welcome at the state casino because of their gambling addiction. I used to come there as a student since they would offer free food and drinks for guests. I would put €2 in the roulette machine, and even if I lost, I had a 3-course lunch, drinks, coffee for €2. All paid for by the person on the other side of the table who looks like he is on welfare, who was playing with €1.000. I've seen so many gambling addicts running through the casino trying to play as many different tables at the same time as possible. Like, are they even having fun? They just look stressed. Not me, but a friend that was a dealer. Dude was there at the start of my friend's shift. My friends would of course make small talk and chit chat with the players. As time was going by, this dude hasn't moved and just played the entire time. Eventually, this dude said that he needed to go at 8:30 p.m. to pick up his kid. My friend's shift ended at 9 p.m. As time got near 8:30, my friend would remind the guy that, "Hey, don't you need to pick up your kid?" The guy would respond, "Yeah, it's close by or just after I win a hand or whatever." 8:30 comes, my friend would remind the guy it's 8:30 and the guy would repeat the same responses. Then 8:45, same thing. At 9 p.m. the guy was still there and my friend collects his tips and leaves. The next fucking day, when my friend shows up to his morning shift, that dude was still there. In the same clothes. My friend almost lost it. But he needed his paycheck, so he just went to his assigned table and worked. I don't really remember how the story ends or when the guy got up or left. But this was nearly 10 years ago when he told me. This was in Tunica. It may or may not have been a huge monumental loss, but I can't imagine that dude still has a family. That's a huge loss for me. It was around 9 a.m. of Christmas morning. I had just arrived to start setting up my bar. One of the customers grabbed my attention and began making a complaint about a punter, a middle-aged lady playing the pokies, saying she smelled like piss and the area around her chair was wet. Sure enough, she pissed her chair. I assumed she didn't want to leave her machine because it was going to pay out soon or some other terrible logical fallacy. What really made me sad was that, when I confronted her, she didn't say a thing, ignored me and kept playing. Called security, who removed her credits and escorted her out, after taking her to the bathroom. She was as mad as a cut snake. Fuck gambling. Another time, I watched a lady have a massive breakdown after gambling the last of her house deposit chasing losses. My ex worked for part of Rank. She was responsible for making sure all the slot machines at UK Rank casinos were working. So she sent out the maintenance staff as and when needed. As a result, we used to get invited to the casinos for dinner from time to time. Since she was an employee, we could not gamble, and everything was on the house. The casino managers would visit with us and chat about how things were going with the machines. They were all what the industry calls AWPs, amusement with prize. But the big losers were on the various tables. One manager, in Leeds, said that their biggest regular loser could dump £10,000 per night and was there 3 or 4 nights a week. He owned a chain of stores. Doctors were frequent visitors too. All their guests were losers in the long term, even if they had the occasional good night. The machines had a set payout rate. The only way to beat them was to have an inside line on where a new machine had been installed. They'd start out with a higher payout rate to make them popular. Once a gambler had won on a machine, they'd pour cash into it in the hope it was lucky for them. But when the machine had paid out a bunch, it would crank down the payout rate, all done automatically in software. The thing that amazed me was that people who installed and managed these things for a living, who knew the company always won, would put their own money in them.
How is that not illegal?
Nowhere do they claim to be fair. The industry literally calls them AWPs. They don't even pretend they are based on chance. The machines know the result as soon as you press the button. They are all run by software and they just motor around to the bad news. The design is intended to attract, entertain, and confuse. The most effective machines gave some appearance of being partly mechanical, but they are extremely tightly controlled. They use direct motor control of the reels, so they are absolutely certain where they will stop. There is a random element, but it is random within a tightly controlled range. So they randomly choose when the next payout will be, but they also choose, based on past performance and machine contents, what the payout will be. If they pay out a large amount, which is extremely unlikely, then the payout rate will be way down until the money in the machine has accumulated again. I have a bunch of stories from that industry. My brother worked for Belfruit for a while. He left because he was concerned about their involvement in Northern Ireland and who they had to pay off. It's all what you would expect given the reputation of the industry for being pseudo-legal.
That's wild. I didn't know slots paid out at a lucky rate early. That's cold. By the way, bonus UK question, is Cinch really just a car report company? I watch a lot of cricket and it seems like Cinch is the main sponsor for all kits. Just wondered if it was a bigger entity than I realized.
I left the UK in 1997. I am way out of date. I never even heard of Cinch. I was a rugby player. Cricket was something I played in the summer, but never watched. I never really watched sports. It was like watching someone eat, not an alternative to doing it myself.